Today we will continue with Luke chapter 20. Now you remember, we already know last time that Jesus has come to Jerusalem. He's now come there. He came in riding on a donkey and he was welcomed. And then he went into the temple. He overturned the tables of the money changers and so on. No? So all that we saw. So now one day, as he was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes with the elders came up and said to him, "Tell us by what authority you do these things, or who it is that gave you this authority." He answered them, "I will also ask you a question. Now tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from men?" And they discussed it with one another, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say, 'Why did you not believe him?' But if we say from men, all the people will stone us, for they are convinced that John was a prophet." So they answered that they did not know whence it was. And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." So here we have all the leaders of Israel coming to Jesus. You see, they are the most important people from the Sanhedrin, which is the supreme council and the governing body of the Jews. And why are they asking him these questions? Because they want to trap him. They want to put a charge against Jesus. They somehow want to arrest him. So they are finding ways and means. So they keep asking question after question, and they will find out that Jesus, in his wisdom, answers in such a way that they are not able to do anything. They are just left speechless. You see? So here is the first question from them about the authority with which he speaks. Now remember, the Jews always, they never spoke on their own. The Jewish rabbis would always say, when speaking, they'll say, so and so said this, or there is a teaching by so and so. So they'll always refer to some rabbi or some teaching. But here we see Jesus teaching on his own authority, and they are just spellbound by the way he speaks with such authority. And how can Jesus take law into his own hands? By cleansing the temple. You can't just get away with that. So the authorities somehow want to trap him, and that is why this question about the authority. And of course Jesus answers the question like a rabbi. You see, the rabbis, when you ask them a question, they'll respond with another question. So here we have Jesus asking them whether John's baptism was human or divine. Now in this question itself lies the answer to their own question. Why? Because John was a forerunner of Jesus, and everybody knew that, and John was always pointing to Jesus as the Messiah. So if they agreed that John's authority was divine, they would also have to agree that Jesus was the Messiah, because John had very clearly said it. And now they are trapped. They cannot say, yes, the John's authority is from heaven, because then he'll ask them, then why didn't you listen to him? So therefore they say, we don't know. You see? So they are completely trapped in their own question. Sometimes it's very difficult to confront the truth, So at the same time, you can't run away from the truth, because the truth is there right in front of you. And if you try to escape, well, actually there is no escape. So the Jews, the leaders of Israel, they knew who Jesus was, but in their hardness of heart, they just refused to accept him. So, they just leave, they just withdraw frustrated, and they have the crowd to support Jesus, so they are not able to do anything. And then Jesus tells a parable to the people who are there. He began to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to tenants and went into another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants that they should give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent another servant. Him also they beat and treated shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent yet a third. This one they wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, "What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. It may be they will respect him." But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, "This is the heir. Let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours." And they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When they heard this, they said, "God forbid." But he looked at them and said, "What then is this that is written? The very stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but when it falls on anyone, it will crush him." The scribes and the Pharisees tried to lay hands on him at that very hour, but they feared the people, for they perceived that he told this parable against them. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere, that they might take hold of what he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So this parable is very, very clear. Now, the vineyard stands for Israel. If you read Isaiah chapter 5 verses 1 to 7, very clearly you have there, the vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel. So the Jews knew, whenever you talk about a vineyard, they would always understand that a vineyard represents Israel. So the tenants are the rulers of Israel, and the nation has been given to them, has been entrusted to them. So they now have a responsibility of taking this nation forward peacefully. And then the messengers are the prophets. Now the Jewish people, especially the leaders, they disregarded the prophets, they persecuted some of them and they killed some of them. All this is history. And then the Son refers to Jesus himself, and Jesus is now talking about the impending doom that is to come upon Israel, that it will be taken over by another nation. Now, the story itself is something that could have happened and something that did happen. You see, Judea in the time of Jesus was under a lot of economic trouble, and there was a lot of labor unrest. That was the historical situation in the time of Jesus. And there were many absentee landlords who let out their land like the way Jesus mentions. And the rent wasn't paid usually in money but in kind. So it would either be a part of the produce or it could be a percentage of the crop, irrespective of whether there was a success or failure in the harvest. So in this teaching we have something very beautiful to understand. First of all, it tells us about the privilege God gives us as human beings. Now the tenants did not create the vineyard. The vineyard was given to them. They just had to take possession of it, take care of it. Now the owner wasn't someone who was watching over them all the time. He was away. So he left it to them to take care. And then the next thing that we see is it talks about human sin. You see, what was the sin of the tenants? They refused to give the owner his due. And they took control of this whole property. And that is the nature of sin. It fails to give God his proper place. And it tries to usurp that power. The next thing is, it talks about our human responsibility. You see, sooner or later, all of us have to give an account for what has been given to us, for what is in our charge. Now, the parable also tells us something about the nature of God. It tells us about God's patience. Now, the owner did not strike in the beginning itself when he sends his servants one by one and they treated them badly. The owner doesn't come down heavily on the tenants. No, God is patient. See, he gives them one chance after another. Now, that is the beauty of God. He waits and waits and waits to see if the man repents. But then finally, the time of reckoning comes. So that is what it says. It talks to us about God's judgment. Now the tenants, they thought they could get away with all this, by killing the prophets, by killing the Son, by killing Jesus. They thought they could get away with this. But no, the day of reckoning will come and does come. It also tells us about Jesus. You see, Jesus knew what was coming, and yet Jesus goes towards his death without turning back. You see, never for a moment did Jesus ever think of turning away from the cross. So it shows us that Jesus never doubted God's ultimate triumph. He knew that beyond the wickedness of men, there was the undefeatable majesty of God. You see, for some time, wickedness will seem to prevail, but then sooner or later, somehow victory will come for Jesus. You see, remember in the parable how Jesus makes this distinction between servants and son. You see, the prophets are referred to as the servants, but he is not another prophet. He is the Son of the Father. So Jesus, through this parable, makes a very clear claim that he is the Son of God, that he is God's chosen Messiah. And then we have this quotation about the stone which the builders rejected, which comes from Psalm 118 verses 22 and 23. Now in the early church, this was a very favorite quotation, and it described the death and resurrection of Jesus. You can read that in Acts chapter 4 verse 11, and then you also have Peter talking about it in his first letter, chapter 2 verse 7, about this stone which was rejected by the builders. So what do we have in this parable for us? You see, God has given us all something to take care of. God has put us in charge. God has given us his own word, and he has called us to be his disciples. And what is our duty and what is our responsibility? We are here to share the good news and to bear fruit. Remember, Jesus says the proof of discipleship is bearing fruit. So if you and I do not bear fruit, we will be cut off. No? So in the final reckoning, Jesus is going to ask us, you have experienced my love. Now what did you do? Did you share my love with others? Were you someone who lived a selfish life, or did you share my love with everyone? This is the question that God is going to ask us. So while we look at this parable, we also need to look at ourselves, that while we are privileged to be called sons and daughters of God, we also have this great responsibility of sharing the good news with everyone. So we can't say, okay, let me wait till I'm old, or wait till I retire. No. Every day, every moment, God gives us an opportunity to share His love with everyone around us. Be it our workplace, be it our place of study, be it on the road, be it anywhere, wherever we are, with whomever we are in touch with, God wants us to share His love in season and out of season, all the time. And so we should constantly be aware of this, that I am a disciple of Jesus, and I carry in my heart the very presence of God, and therefore I always need to conduct myself in such a way that I'll be a witness for Jesus, that I'll be another Jesus in front of people, so that people looking at me can see Jesus in me. So that should be my constant awareness and realization, that I carry Jesus in my heart and that I need to share His love with everyone. So if we have this deep down in our hearts, wherever we go and whatever we do, we will be able to be witnesses to God's love. We will be able to bear fruit in all that we do. Yes, we are weak, we are frail, we are human, but God will give us the grace and the strength to overcome these weaknesses and to shine through all this. And through all our weaknesses, through all our brokenness, God will give us the grace to stand up for Him if we desire to really do His will. May we have this great desire to always serve Jesus and to bear fruit all the time. Praise God.